Being needed can feel addictive, but mature leadership is not built on being needed for everyone. Mature leadership is on building people, clarity, systems, and culture so that the right things happen without you needing to touch every single one. I thought being the best at my job made me the best person to lead for a long time. I actually believed that. I was the guy with the answers, the one who could jump into the meeting, fix the issue, close the customer, solve the conflict, and make the call, and keep the whole thing moving in the process. And from the outside, that can look like leadership. It can even feel like leadership, but in my experience, it was something very different. It was control. It was dependency. And over time, it became a ceiling in my business, my team, and honestly, my life. If you're watching this and you feel like everything still runs through you, if your team is good, but nothing really moves until you weigh in, if you're carrying the pressure, answering the questions, making the decisions, solving the problems, and wondering why you are exhausted all the time, this is for you. Because I know the feeling. I know it way too well. And the hardest part is, when you are in it, it can actually look like success. I mean, people need you, the business depends on you, customers trust you, your team actually comes to you, you feel important, you feel valuable, you feel needed. But being needed and building something healthy are not the same thing. In fact, in a lot of businesses, the more needed the owner becomes, the more fragile the business actually is. And that is a hard truth, and the one that I had to learn the hard way. My name is Stephen Wieringa. I am a husband, a business owner, a dad, and an entrepreneur. I've built and grown businesses from the ground up, and I'm still in the middle of it today. In these videos, I break down the biggest lessons that I have learned in the process, as well as talk to other business leaders that share their knowledge and experience so that you can learn from them as well. Now, if this interests you, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. I will see it, and it is encouragement to keep coming back and making these videos in the future. Now, one of the biggest lessons that I learned did not come from a book, it did not come from a podcast, and it did not come from a mastermind. It actually came from the pressure of realizing that I had built a business that relied way too much on me. I was proud of being the one that people needed, proud of being the closer, proud of being the problem solver, proud of being the one who could carry the weight. And to be fair, when you are building something early on, that actually does matter. In the beginning, you probably need to do a lot of those things. You do have more to carry than your share. You do have to move fast. You do have to jump in and make things happen. That is real. But what helps you build it in the beginning can absolutely break it later if you do not change. That was me. I learned this in a very real way during my years at Perception Engineering. I put everything into that business: time, energy, thought, stress, heart. I cared deeply, and because I cared deeply, I stayed close to everything. I knew every customer. I knew the work. I knew the details. I knew how things were supposed to be done. And because I knew all of that, people came to me constantly. I had the answers, and that really feels efficient. That feels useful. That feels productive. But here's what I was actually doing. It was actually teaching everyone around me that the fastest path forward was through me. Not the system, not the process, not their own judgment, but me. That is a dangerous place to get to, because once your business learns that you are the shortcut, it keeps coming back to you over and over and over again. And eventually you wake up and realize you're not leading a team. You are actually managing a dependency. And that is exactly what I was doing. Every decision came through me. Every exception came through me. Every hard customer issue came through me. Every internal question came through me. Every gray area landed on my plate. And the crazy part is, a lot of that happened because I was good at it. I could move fast. I could make the call. I could save the situation. So people kept coming and I kept stepping in. And every time I did, I reinforced the pattern. That is the trap. The better you are at rescuing the business, the more the business will depend on being rescued by you. And if you are not careful, you will become the hero and the bottleneck at the exact same time. That is the brutal combination, because it feeds your ego while draining your life. There was a season where I was carrying that constantly. Phone buzzing early, messages coming in late, questions stacking up, team members waiting, customers needing responses, problems circling over and over, always on, always available, always slightly behind. And if you have lived it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Even when you are physically present, mentally you are still at work. You could be sitting at dinner and still thinking about the customer that has not replied. You could be with your wife and still mentally replaying the conversation that went sideways. You could be holding your kids and still carrying the pressure of what tomorrow needs from you. That is not a good way to live, and it is definitely not the kind of leadership I want to model. But when you're in the middle of the building, you can just justify it. You could tell yourself, hey, it's just part of the game. This is just a season. This is what it takes. I'm going to do whatever it takes. It's the price of leadership. I told myself all of that. And some of it actually can feel true for a season. But if that becomes your permanent operating system, it will cost you more than you think. It'll cost your peace. It'll cost your clarity. It'll cost your relationships. And eventually it'll cost the growth of the business itself, because the business can only move as fast as you can absorb pressure. And that is not scale. That is survival with some nice branding around it. I remember sitting in a meeting one time and being asked a question that stopped me in my tracks. It was not a bad question or unreasonable one, but the person asking it absolutely could have answered that for themselves. They had the knowledge, they had enough context, they had the ability, but I had conditioned them in such a way that they had to come to me anyway. Why? Because for years, I'd been the quickest answer in the room. And in that moment, I realized something I really did not want to admit. I had trained people to hesitate, not because they were weak, not because they lacked talent, but because I had made myself too central. I had made myself the decision maker in so many moments that people stopped strengthening those muscles themselves. Now look, I want people to grow. I want them to lead. I want them to gain confidence. I want them to own things. And I had to face that reality that my behavior was getting in the way of some of that. This is where it really shifted for me. I started seeing that my job as an owner was not being the best firefighter in the building. My job was to build a place where fewer fires needed me in the first place. That is a completely different role, and it requires a completely different identity. That is the part most people skip. They think it is a systems issue. They think it is a delegation issue. They think that is a calendar issue. Yes, those things matter, but underneath all of that, this is an identity issue. Because if your identity is tied to being one who saves the day, you will unconsciously keep creating situations where you have to save the day, even if it's slowing the business down. Being needed can feel addictive, but mature leadership is not built on being needed for everyone. Mature leadership is on building people, clarity, systems, and culture so that the right things happen without you needing to touch every single one. That shift changed a lot for me. It changed how I lead. It changed what I reward. It changed how I answered questions. It changed how I think about value. At SWYFT, this is something I think about a lot. Not because I've mastered it perfectly. I have not. But because I have seen both sides, I know what it feels like to be buried in everything. I know what it feels like when your team starts to truly own, truly lead, and truly move without waiting on you every second. That is better for the business, for the team, for your life, for your marriage, and your ability to think. For your ability to lead at the right level, because that is another part of this. When you are trapped in constant reaction, you lose space to think strategically. You lose the altitude an owner is supposed to bring. You stop asking bigger questions because you are too busy answering the little ones, and that is dangerous, especially if you're building something that's supposed to last. What changed? A few things, and none of them were flashy. First, I had to stop being the easiest path. That sounds simple, but it is not. Because if someone brings you a question and you know the answer, the easiest thing in the world to do is just to give it to them, right? It takes 10 seconds. It feels efficient, keeps things moving, but it solves today at the expense of tomorrow. So I had to restart responding differently. Not in a cold way, not in a lazy way, but in a coaching way. Instead of just answering, I would actually ask, what do you think? What's the other options? What would you do if I was not here? What are you leaning towards? What is the risk if we go this direction? At first, it definitely felt slower. Because it is slower, but it is slower in the same way that going up the stairs is slower than taking the elevator. One builds strength and one avoids it. That shift started building strength in the people around me. Second, I had to create more clarity. A lot of owner dependence is really clarity debt. People ask because roles are blurry, authority is unclear, processes live in your head, standards are assumed and not taught. Decisions are being made by memory instead of framework. That creates chaos, and the owner usually absorbs that chaos. So I had to get things out of my head, put them into processes, into documentations, into training, into clear lanes, into scorecards, into accountability, into all the things. Not because I love to do that, not because I love paperwork, because every time something stayed trapped in my head, the business suffered. That does not scale. Third, I had to give up real authority, not pretend authority, not authority until I got uncomfortable, real authority. That means someone knows what they own. They know where the boundaries are. They know the target, they know the standards, and they know they are expected to make the call. That is how ownership grows. A lot of leaders say they want empowered people, but what they really want is helpful people who still run everything by them. That is not empowerment. That is supervised dependence, and it still keeps you trapped. Fourth, I had to let people make some smaller mistakes. This is where a lot of owners struggle because you can see the mistakes coming. You know how to avoid it. You know how to tighten it up. You know how to make it clearer, and everything in you wants to jump in. But when you remove every possible mistake from someone's path, you also remove the reps that builds judgment. And judgment is one of the most valuable things a leader can develop. Now, I'm not talking about being careless. I'm not talking about letting people blow up major customer relationships or make reckless financial decisions. I am talking about letting them own enough to learn. Because if they never get to feel the weight of a decision, they will never build the muscle to make better ones. And that part matters. Fifth, and probably the hardest, I had to redefine what I thought made me valuable for the business. This was real work. For years, I felt valuable to business because I was involved, because I was fast, because I was sharp, because I could solve things, and because people needed me. And some of that was true. But if that stays your definition of value forever, you will build a business that always depends on your energy more than its own structure. That's not freedom. That's not scale. And if I'm being honest, that is not what I want. I want to build things that last. I want to build teams that lead. I want to build a business that serves people well without requiring me. I want to be present with my wife. I want to be present with my kids, and I want the margin to think, pray, lead, and make the right decisions at the right level. And you do not get that by making yourself more needed. You get that by building better. This is the part where some people hear this and think it means stepping back emotionally. It does not. I still care deeply. I still work hard. I still stay close to the business. I want excellence. I still believe that the details matter. This is not about becoming passive. It is about becoming more effective. It is about using your time where it creates the most value instead of where your ego gets the most validation. That is a huge difference. And here is the truth. Some of you watching this are probably the bottleneck right now. Not because your team is weak, not because your business model is broken, not because there is no opportunity, but because somewhere along the way you became too central, too involved, too available, too necessary. And it probably even feels noble. You are carrying it all. You are protecting it. You are making sure it does not fall apart. I get that. I really do. But sometimes the thing you think is protecting the business is actually keeping it from growing up. I know, that's hard to hear, but it is true. And if you feel some tension listening to this, good. That it probably means you know exactly what I'm talking about. So let me make this very practical. If you want to start changing this, here's where I would begin. Pick one area of the business where people come to you too often. Not 10 areas, one. Look at the reoccurring questions. Look at the reoccurring approvals. Look for the reoccurring slowdowns. Then ask yourself, is this really something that I need to do? Or is this something I just simply haven't trained other people to do for me? That question alone can uncover a lot. Then pick one decision this week and hand it over for real. Not halfway, not with hidden veto power, for real. Give the context, give the standards, give the goal, give the guide rails, and then let them carry it. Will they do it exactly the way you would? Probably not. But that is the point. The point is building a business where leadership is multiplied, not centralized. Because here is what I have come to believe. A healthy business should get stronger when leaders inside it grow, not just when the owner works harder. And if the only way your company works is when you're tired, overextended, and in the middle of everything, then what you have built might be impressive from the outside, but it is still fragile. There is a better way. I'm still working on it, and I still am learning it. But I have seen enough to know this. You do not scale by being needed more. You scale by building people, systems, and clarity that reduce how often you have to be needed in the first place. That is leadership. That is maturity. And over the long run, that is freedom. Not freedom to do nothing. Freedom to do what actually matters most. So if you are the owner who feels tired all the time, if you are the leader everyone depends on, if you are the one saying yes to too much, solving too much, carrying too much, and wondering why growth still feels heavy, maybe the next time breakthrough in your business is not you doing more. Maybe it is you finally deciding to stop being the center of everything. So now if this kind of honest conversation around business ownership, leadership growth, and family building is something that's interesting to you, check out the video over here and I'll see you on the other side.